Hello everyone, welcome to StudyIQ. In this video, I will bring to you the complete analysis of the Economic Survey 2017 in English language. So this video is brought to you by me. My name is Dr. Gaurav Garg. I'll be analyzing the video for you. Before I even begin analyzing Economic Survey, let me tell you what is Economic Survey in case you have some questions about it. So Economic Survey is tabled one day before the budget. So today it's 1st of February, yesterday was 31st of January, one day before the budget every year. The Chief Economic Advisor always presents the Economic Survey, and it is tabled by the Minister of Finance, that is, it was tabled in the Parliament by Mr. Arun Jaitley. Economic Survey, it gives a detailed account of the state of the economy, that is, what is our present state of the economy, how it is performing, what are the future prospects, what is the likely GDP growth that we can expect, and what are the challenges that our country faces right now, so that when we devise the policies, then we can make use of the Economic Survey. So it is basically a suggestion, like a suggestion for our future policy makers. Whenever they make any policy in the future, then they can make use of the Economic Survey. But always remember one thing, that Economic Survey, it is not binding on the government. Economic Survey is only a suggestion. Government is not obligated to take into account the Economic Survey. Now the survey puts out economic growth forecast also, that what is the likely GDP growth that we will have in the next financial year, and the reasons for that. It also emphasizes on how our economy can perform better, gives out suggestions, tells about various sectors. For example, last year the Economic Survey was a two-part volume, and the second part had all the sectors, the state of all the sectors. This time, however, the Economic Survey was very different, because there is only one volume that has been released, and the second part, which had the analysis about all the sectors, is done away with. It was not presented yesterday. However, our Chief Economic Advisor, Mr. Arvind Subramaniam, he said that the second part is likely to come out in sometimes around June. And the government, as I said, it is not bound to follow the recommendations, and the Economic Survey merely serves as a policy guide for our policy makers. Now this survey was unusual because it was a one volume framework, which means that only one volume came out, and the second volume, which used to have various sectors, that volume has been done away with. It is expected somewhere in June. So what did the Economic Survey actually tell? So the first focus was on demonetization. As expected, there was talks in detail about demonetization, and the government actually considered for the first time that because of demonetization, there has been an impact on the economy. Everything has slowed down. However, they said that in the long term, the economy is likely to pick up because of remonetization. So because of demonetization, the decline that is expected is 0.25% to 0.5%. This is a very important figure that you should know. 0.25% to 0.5% is the likely decline in the GDP growth. That is in the short term. Now, as far as long term, our Chief Economic Advisor, Mr. Arvind Subramaniam, he was very bullish, very optimistic. He said that the real GDP growth in 2017-2018, that is from 1st April 2017 to 31st March 2018, which is also called financial year 2018, it is projected to be in the range of 6.75% to 7.5%. So our economy can grow in financial year 2018 anywhere between 6.75 to 7.5%. And this is in lines with various projections. For example, the projection by RBI is 7.1%. The projection by International Monetary Fund is 6.6%. So it is very similar to the projections by other multilateral platforms. And the survey highlighted that there are three risks to the Indian growth. Number one is that how far is the effect of demonetization, and if or whether we will be able to counter the effect of the demonetization. However, Arvind Subramaniam was very, very optimistic. He said that by March 2017, we would have remonetized sufficiently. And you know that 1st February onwards, the limit on ATM withdrawal has been done away with. So there will be adequate cash for the public once again, and it will be business as usual. These were his words. And therefore, by March 2017, we would have remonetized, and therefore from April onwards, the economy is likely to pick up once again. So first is the effect of the demonetization, and if the effect of demonetization is very severe, then our economy faces a risk. Second is the oil prices. You know that the oil prices have been plummeting for the past 3 years. They have been decreasing. For example, when Narendra Modi government took over, the prices were around $140 per barrel, whereas they reduced to almost $40 per barrel. And there was a meeting of all the oil exporting countries, that is the OPEC meeting. Now Russia is not a part of the OPEC, but it was still invited into the meeting of OPEC, and all the countries which export oil like Russia, Angola, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, they decided that they will decrease their oil production, because if they decrease their oil production, then there will be a shortage of oil in the market, and therefore the oil prices might pick up again. That was what was decided. All of these countries which export oil, apart from Saudi Arabia and one or two more, they are struggling. For example, in Venezuela, right now, the economy is on the verge of collapse. There is 1600% inflation, and the president of Venezuela, Mr. Maduro, he was forced to publish currency of Venezuela, which is Olivar. So he was forced to publish 20,000 Olivar note also. That shows the kind of inflation that is there in Venezuela right now. So these countries decided that the oil prices need to be increased once again for the economy to be sustainable. And therefore, if the oil prices increase, then there is a significant risk to the oil importing countries like China, like India, etc. Then the trade tensions among major countries is another risk factor. And we have seen that because of the geopolitics, there is tension between countries. For example, recent tensions between America and Israel, recent tensions between America and Philippines, so recent tensions between Taiwan and China, these might affect the trade between various countries. Now, growth rate, these are very important data from the economic survey. Growth rate of the industrial sector in India is estimated to be only 5.2%. In 2016-2017, that is from 1st April 2016 to 31st March 2017, also called financial year 2017. And last fiscal, that is 2015 to 2016, it was 7.4%. So there is a healthy decrease of 2.2% in the industrial sector because of, again, demonetization. And the agriculture sector is expected to grow at 4.1% in the current year. That is again financial year 2017, from 1.2% that was in the previous fiscal, that is 2015 to 2016. So agriculture is likely to grow, whereas industrial sector is likely to decline. Now, what about remonetization? So Arvind Subramaniam said that demonetization was actually just one of the steps. The government needs to do more. And what more? First, there has to be very quick remonetization now. Otherwise, economy will suffer. Second, the government should push for digitization, because digital India or cashless India is the key to have a strong economic growth in the long term. Another very important point, that GST, there were two severe deficiency in the GST when it was announced, that land and real estate was not covered under the ambit of the GST. But he said that we need to bring land and real estate also under the ambit of the goods and services tax. Then there has to be a reduction in tax and stamp duty, and there has to be an improved tax administration system. That is, the taxation framework that is there in India has to be very robust, so that more and more people should come under the bracket of the tax, and also the benefit should go to the poor. So these are some of the steps which he suggested for a proper healthy economic growth. Now, one thing that was very positive was the performance of the states, that is the financial performance of the states. There has been a sharp improvement in the financial position of all the states of India over the last few years. And the average revenue deficit has been eliminated, and the average fiscal deficit was curbed to less than 3% of the gross state domestic product, which we call in short GSDP. Non-performing assets remain the biggest challenge in front of the government. In fact, they have increased, and this is despite the government trying all the things possible. Not just the government, but the Reserve Bank of India has tried all the possible things. For example, Government of India tried the Indradhanush scheme, RBI tried the S4 scheme, then they tried the Sarfazi Act, there has been capitalization of the banks. So they have tried everything, but still the gross non-performing assets have only increased, and they have climbed to now 12% of the gross advances for public sector banks. That is at the September end. And in fact, even after September, they have just continuously increased. So India's non-performing asset ratio is higher than any other emerging country apart from Russia. So only Russia's non-performing assets are higher than India when it comes to the major emerging markets. And what is the effect of these non-performing assets now? Because of the non-performing assets, the banks are a little reluctant to give money to the small and medium enterprises. And as a result, the micro, small and medium enterprises, they are suffering and their growth is continuously decreasing. Also, the growth in the private and overall investment has turned negative now. That is, the people are not investing and the growth in the private and overall investment is now negative. So therefore some strong decisions need to be taken with regard to the non-performing assets. And lot of banks are suffering. For example, 13 banks which account for 40% of India's loans, they are severely stressed right now. And some of these banks are like Punjab National Bank and Bank of Baroda, which have posted the largest losses in their history in the year 2016. And the PSU banks, their return on assets are way below the international standards or the global norms. Investors are also not willing to pay the full price for the shares of the government banks, that is the public sector banks. Now another important thing was that they said that the RBI right now is highly capitalized, exceptionally highly capitalized, because after demonetization, which was announced on 8th of November 2016, lot of people, they deposited money into the banks. Almost all the money was deposited into the banks. So RBI right now is exceptionally highly capitalized, and they said that this money can be used to recapitalize the government banks. But they also said that there were allegations on the central government that the entire exercise of demonetization is to bail out the banks, bail out the non-performing assets of the banks. So the RBI must not lose its credibility if it finances the public sector banks again, if it recapitalizes the banks again. And the RBI can also use this excess capital or the surplus capital to extinguish the debts that the government has undertaken in the last few years. But again, because of that, the RBI should not lose its credibility. Now, when it comes to asset rehabilitation, now we have seen that the government has been slightly reluctant to take tough decisions when it comes to the debt. So there is a suggestion of setting up of a centralized public sector asset rehabilitation agency, or ARA in short, that will look after the largest, most difficult cases, and it will make the politically tough decisions that the government has been reluctant to take to reduce the debts in India. Another very important factor was the targeting of the poor people. Arvind Subramaniam said that let's say if I have 1000 rupees, I am government and I have 1000 rupees and I want to transfer this money to the poor. How will I make sure that this money is actually transferred to the poor? So he said that there needs to be adequate mechanisms in place to make sure that the benefit of the subsidy or the money can be directly delivered to the poor. And for that, he has suggested various things. So first, the redistribution by the government is far from efficient. That is what he said in targeting the poor. The benefit of the subsidy or any government policies are not actually reaching the poor. So the poor are being alienated. Secondly, the capacity of the government in delivering the essential services like health and education is weak, is very, very poor. Why? Because of corruption, because of clientelism, that is cartelism or clientelism, crony capitalism, and red tape and excessive rules. So red tape is when there are a lot of official formalities which render all the mechanisms inefficient. That is called red tape. So another thing Arvind Subramaniam said is that competitive populism is more in evidence vis-a-vis competitive service delivery. And we have seen that competitive populism in various states. For example, in Tamil Nadu, we saw that when Selvi Jayalalitha was there, then we had this 1 rupee idli and cheap medicines for the poor. But these excessive subsidies or following this socialist kind of model is actually playing to the gallery. It is competitive populism and it is not actually competitive service delivery. So efficient implementation and thorough targeting or thorough implementation and proper delivery of the services is more important than competitive populism. Then the most important part of economic survey was universal basic income. So what is universal basic income? It is a poverty alleviation program to reduce the poverty where the money is transferred directly into the bank account of the poor so that they have the basic money to take care of their basic needs like food, etc. So it is an alternative to various social welfare schemes that we have in an effort to reduce poverty. So it is for poverty alleviation. Despite having a robust economic growth, our poverty alleviation rate remains one of the poorest. And this survey said that to ensure that the benefit reaches to the poor, then there has to be a functional JAM, that is Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile. This is very, very important if we have to make sure that the cash transfer goes directly into the account of the beneficiary. And another very important thing is that when the government has any implementation schemes, any schemes for the welfare of the poor, then for proper implementation of that scheme, there has to be a cost sharing between the center and the state. That is, if the state also devises any scheme for the poor, then the cost or the allocation or outlay of that scheme should be shared by the center and state for proper implementation. Now, universal basic income is a very double-edged sword, because we can give money to the poor, but that doesn't really help. But we have also seen that if we don't give money to the poor, then they remain stressed. They remain in perpetual poverty. So there are pros and cons of both UBI which need to be discussed. But is India ready for UBI? Arvind Subramaniam said that this time is ripe for discussion. I'll show you his exact words. He said, universal basic income is an idea which is ripe for discussion, but it is not ripe for implementation right now. There has to be more calibration, more discussion, more debate on it. Another factor that is against UBI is that it puts excessive financial load on the exchequer. That is, the government has to spend the money and it will cost significant amount of money. For example, if we want to reduce the poverty to 0.5%, then it will cost us 4 to 5% of our entire GDP. And this also assuming that the top 25% people income bracket, they do not participate. That is, even after making sure that the benefit actually goes to the lower 75%, still it will cost us 4 to 5% of GDP. And if the top 25% are also included, then of course it will be much higher. It can climb as high as 10% of the GDP, which is very, very large. And he also said that the existing subsidies, that is the existing middle class subsidy and the food, petroleum and fertilizer subsidy, are costing us about 3% of the GDP every year. So for such reasons, we need to be very sure whether the idea of UBI is right for India at the moment or not, and therefore it is a good time for discussion but not implementation. And the UBI, it is based on the principle by our father of the nation Mahatma Gandhi, and it is based on 3 principles, that is universality, unconditionality and agency. So this you need to learn for your exam. Universality, unconditionality and agency are the 3 principles on which universal basic income concept is formulated. He also said that property tax, now a study has been done for this and it has been shown that property tax can actually be a very good source for the government to increase their revenue at the city level, and property tax should not be put on the rural side. So this is again one of the ways it has very good potential for the government and it can be a very good source of the revenue. Satellite imagery. What is satellite imagery? Like we use Google Map, Apple Map, GPS, global positioning system. These are all satellite imagery, and satellite imagery can be a very useful tool according to Arvind Subramaniam for improving the urban governance by facilitating better property tax compliance, and this is very, very important. Now let's talk about job creation. So India is having a jobless growth as has been seen. In fact, the World Bank has said now that 69% of jobs in India, they are threatened because of the automation or the artificial intelligence. And we saw one of the example yesterday, that just yesterday Infosys has fired 9,000 people because of automation, and the number is likely to increase in the coming months. In the last 1 year alone, Infosys has fired 9,000 people. This was in Economic Times yesterday. So India faces a severe threat of jobless growth. And for job creation, he said that 2 industries are very, very important. One is the apparel industry and second is the leather industry. These 2 industries are the key if we want to have more jobs. And therefore, to increase the number of jobs in these 2 industries, there have to be reforms in labor and tax with regard to the apparel and leather industry, and also to make these 2 industries globally competitive. Next, labor migration. So labor migration has increased, and that is the interstate labor mobility is very high compared to the previous estimates. In fact, in this particular economic survey, there was comprehensive study about labor migration from 2011 to 2016. So 9 million people every year they do labor migration from one state to another. So the interstate labor mobility is 9 million per year. This was announced, and there are some states from which people move out. So more people move out than actually come in, like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. So they have net out migration. Whereas he said that there are 7 states which have a net in migration. That is, more people have came into these states than the ones who have actually gone out. These states are Goa, Delhi. Delhi, although not is not a state, it is a union territory. Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Karnataka. These states have net in migration. They have positive CMM values reflecting net in migration. But Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, because of low jobs, low education, and low socioeconomic standards, more people are likely to go out, and they have actually gone out, and therefore there is a net out migration. So as I said, 9 million people migrated between states every year from 2011 to 2016. And the how to maximize the labor migration, in the sense how to make best use of labor migration, how to maximize the benefit of migration. That is, we need to ensure portability of food security benefits. Then we need to provide healthcare and a social security framework for the migrants. For that, there has to be an interstate self-registration process. That is, the migrants who are going from one state to another, there has to be their registration so that benefits can be given to these migrants. And these benefits will be food security benefits, healthcare benefit, and social security benefits. Now, the economic survey also said that inflation is under control, and there are many types of inflation, but the inflation that Arvind Subramaniam and his IMF colleague Raghuram Rajan they trusted more was the consumer price index inflation, or the CPI inflation. And they said that for the third year in a row it has been in control. The average CPI inflation, it has declined to 4.9% in the financial year 2016 from 5.9% in the financial year 2015. So it has decreased from 5.9% to 4.9%. So by 1%. That is the CPI inflation. Now when it comes to food inflation, then the pulses were said to be the major contributor. Even in the year, as per the economic survey, even in the year 2016, pulses continued to be the major factor for food inflation. So these were the important points from the economic survey. Now, of course, economic survey cannot be done in just 20-25 minutes. It is a 300-page plus PDF document. So I will go into detail. It will take around 15 to 20 days, and I will come with a very detailed analysis. But this was the highlight of the economic survey 2017. So thanks for watching.